Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walah wa ba'd. Al-Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah, the following hadith is hadith Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu ardah, and we still talk about the chapter of warning against bad characteristic traits. In this hadith, قال النبي قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إياكم والظن فإن الظن أكذب الحديث متفق عليه. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu narrated that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, avoid suspicion, for suspicion is the most false form of talk. The most false form of talk, or the worst form of lying, also you can translate it. And you can use avoid suspicion or assumption. For suspicion or assumption is the most form of lying or the most false form of talk. This hadith reported by Al-Bukhari and Muslim, and it is part of a bigger or longer hadith. So the whole entire text goes like this. وَلَا تَحَسَّسُوا وَلَا تَنَاجَشُوا وَلَا تَحَاسَدُوا وَلَا تَبَاغَضُوا وَلَا تَدَابَرُوا وَكُونُوا عِبَادَ اللَّهِ إِخْوَانًا. And he's going to repeat this hadith in the next chapter, talk about good manners. But وَلَا تَحَسَّسُوا, yani do not try. التحسس is basically, التحسس, it means that you try to figure things out, to find out about people, kind of spying on people, okay? And وَلَا تَنَاجَشُوا, النجش, it's a form of, basically النجش is when you go to auction, okay? And we were about to buy a car. Then the doctor want to buy this car, and I know he wants this car so badly. And I know that. So what I do, I go to him and I said, when the doctor put the pet in at $10,000, you raise it, say 11,000. So he wants the car. See what he will do? He'll say 11,500, 11,700. And he raised the price. He has no interest in buying it, only to make this person pay more for it. This is what al-najash, and that's haram in Islam. It is haram. Unfortunately, they do that in auctions. Anyway, he said, وَلَا تَحَاسَدُوا, and do not envy one another. وَلَا تَبَاغَضُوا, don't hate one another. وَلَا تَدَابَرُوا, don't boycott one another. Okay? وَكُونُوا عِبَادَ اللَّهِ إِخْوَانًا, be brothers, be servant of God and brothers to one another. And that hadith should show you how beautiful the society should be. So he only brought from the hadith the part which is forbade us from having assumptions about people or suspicions about people. Al-dhann is to be suspicious or to accuse someone without evidence. That's what al-dhann. هو التهمة بلا دليل. That I accuse you with something and I have no valid proof. Okay? Also, dhann could means that when I believe in something without strong proof, but I believe in it, even though I don't have a very strong proof that lead me to it. It could be wrong, yes, but I feel like I lean more towards saying that this is correct, this is valid. So الظن هو إدراك الشيء مع احتمال ضده بدليل مرجوح. But here, in this hadith in particular, it means that you accuse someone with something with no proof, with no sound or valid proof. قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أكذب الحديث. It's a false talk. It is basically the most lying, or the most form of lying, most false form of talk. Why it was called lie, akdabul hadith, even though suspicious and assumption is something inside my heart and my mind. Why Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam call it lying? Okay? Because usually when you have suspicions about someone and you have assumption, you start talking based on your assumption. So when I talk, I will be lying because I'm not saying something based on truth. So for example, I have suspicion that Kahari, okay, he eats my lunch, which is on Friday. Every time before Jummah, I put my lunch there, and mashallah, my lunch is gone. And I know Kahari loved the chicken shawarma that I bring. I have my suspicion. So I'll say, man, this mashallah Kahari guy, he is like monster, man. He's like eating chicken left and right. And shawarma is not even like, you know, it's not even fried chicken or anything. Like, it's just shawarma chicken. And okay, he likes shawarma chicken. If I tell his neighbors about it, he will, he'll be in trouble. Anyway, so and I have my suspicion. So I start talking about it. That's lying. So always, that's why it was the form of lying, okay, and it was called that. طيب, I will focus on this hadith. What do we learn from this hadith? Number one, that suspicion and assumption are haram to accuse someone based on assumption or suspicion. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran in Surah Al-Hujurat, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, O who you believe, ijtanibu kathiran min al-dhann. Avoid most of the suspicions. Most of the assumptions are wrong. So avoid it. Su'al, I have a question for you. ما هو الفائدة? What do you think? Kahari, you tell me. Hey, Kahari, what do you think the point of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying, addressing like this, O who you believe, avoid suspicion? He didn't say, O mankind or human. He said, O who you believe. He called the believers.
I think it's addressed because they should have a higher standard.
You're expecting believers have a high standard of morality. Believe, should you act and behave different than just an average person who don't believe? Number one. Number two, also, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling us that whenever He says, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, look at what's next. You will find what is next part of the component of Iman. Al-Iman is made of what? Sets of actions, sets of obligations, and things that you should avoid. So that means whatever coming now, it is one of these sets of things that you should avoid as a believer. Your Iman should lead you to avoid this, because that's from Iman that you avoid suspicions, that you avoid assumptions, and you accuse people with no evidence. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Inna ba'da al-dhanni ithm. Some of this, so you avoid most of the suspicions, you avoid it, okay? And some of them can be a sin. If you start acting upon it, that became sin. If you start saying it, that became a sin. Al-dhann akdabul hadith, the most false form of talking, or the most form of lying. Why? Type question. Which worse, lying or suspicion assumption? Lying, that's right, all the hadith talk about. But here the Prophet said, قَالْ أَكْذَبُ الْحَدِيث. It's the worst form of lying. That does make suspicion and assumption worse from one perspective, which is, it doesn't mean lying is a major sin. But here it is worse than just a regular lie. Why? Because lying, everybody knows it's haram. Everybody knows it's ugly. All humanity agree that lying is not something good. Bashar kullum, all humanity knows that truthful is the virtue and lying is bad quality. That's right? We all know that. Lying is a bad thing. Even kids, lying, they know that they did something wrong when they lie. Here, Why it is the worst form of lying? Because lying you easily can recognize, but assumption something you will not recognize as lying. You will have it in your heart, in your mind, and you will carry it on. Okay, I lie, I made up lie, I know that I'm lying. You know what? I took this money from you. I didn't take it. I'm lying. I know I can live with that. But assumption, it is in the back of my head and I don't even check it. I act upon it. I live with it. I never even say astaghfirullah from it. How many times we had bad assumption of people, bad thought of people, and we didn't even thought twice to make istighfar from it. That's why it is worse from that perspective. Al-ulama rahimahumullah said, قالوا لخفائه. طيب. And that's why Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam wants us to be very careful from assumption, because a lot of people don't pay attention to it. And that's very true, by the way. And you will be surprised how much assumptions and suspicion is very, very common. Is very, very common. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, avoid most of it. أكثر الظن كثيرا من الظن إن بعد الظن إثم. العلماء رحمهم الله said, الظن is the backbite of the heart. There's backbite with the tongue when I say, oh, Shaykh Ibrahim is this and that, he's not here. Absent. I said bad things about him. He's absent. That's the ghibah with the tongue. But also there is the ghibah with the heart, which is the assumption that inside my heart and my mind, oh, he must be doing this, he must do that. You see? And you talking to yourself about, that's ghibah with yourself, within yourself. العلماء رحمه الله قالوا هذه غيبة القلب. And that's why Allah mentioned su'ul dhan before He mentioned in Surah Al-Hujurat the issue of the ghibah or the backbite of the tongue. He started with اجتنبوا كثيرا من الظن إن بعض الظن إثم. He started with that. Why? Because it starts from the heart, it starts from the mind. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَلَا تَجَسَّسُوا. And the hadith also said, وَلَا تَحَسَّسُوا. And don't spy. Because if I have assumption, what's the next step? Spying. To make sure my suspicion is right or not. Check it out. So I go and start spying. That's why it came in that order in the Quran. Then after that, I'll start talking about. That's why in the Quran next comes the ghibah, the backbite. And in the hadith, the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam also start talking about that. In the hadith that وَلَا تَنَاجَشُوا وَلَا تَحَاسَدُوا it will be hasad and hatred, okay? Because when you have suspicion, I start acting upon that and I hate you and distance you. And in the Quran, Surah Al-Hujurat, verse 12, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَلَا تَجَسَّسُوا. Then next, وَلَا يَغْتَبْ بَعْضُكُمْ بَعْضًا. Don't backbite one another, because this one lead to this, the next. Also, this hadith shows you that if there is no valid suspicion, you should not investigate. I don't have a valid reason to investigate. You should not have the suspicion and you should not act upon it. But if I have a valid reason, you know what, my son, I smell like something in his breath. I smell like in his room. I have a suspicion that he's smoking weed, and I'm gonna go check. But you know what? He has nothing. What? Oh, no, that's shawarma. Yeah. No reason for me to, is not allowed for you to have these bad thoughts and to act and to investigate. Okay? There is no reason to be suspicious of my wife. And I go check. And I go check on my husband or my partner. There is no reason. There is no any reason. We have a system placed between me and my partner, my company. Everything check, everything good. But there is some people always have this suspicion in their heart and their mind about, oh, he's robbing me. That's haram. This, you have to fight that. If there is no reason, I will say this, I'm saying it several times now. طيب. Is it sin to have the thoughts? If just the thoughts and you fight it, no sin. But if you give into it, that's the sin. لأن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم said, Allah will not hold you accountable for your thoughts. If your suspicions and your assumption, it's just a thought, and you say, no, astaghfirullah, inshallah, my son will not be like that, my wife will not be like that, my partner will be like that, and I just, no, the sheikh is not like that, no, brother so-and-so is not like that. It's just a thought. There's no sin. But if I give into it, and I believe in it, and I act upon it, that's where the sin comes. Al-Khattabi rahimahullah ta'ala said, هذا الحديث ليس المراد ترك العمل بالظن مطلقا. The point is not every assumption is rejected. If there is reasons for you, or there's reason for you to validate that assumption is correct. And sometimes I don't have 100% sure, but I'm very much, غلبة الظن, very much can tell this is true. Like for instance, if I see somebody's drunk and the khamr smell coming out of his mouth, or you do a blood test and his blood test proved that it's alcohol, he was drinking. I didn't see him drinking, but the smell, my assumption have a very good reason for me to be suspicious of it. If my husband comes back home and I see, the hairs and the print of like lipsticks on his neck or on his shirt, there is a good reason for this wife to be suspicious of her husband. He always late, he never come, there is a good reason. There's money disappearing, I have a good reason to have suspicion. By the way, having assumptions and suspicions of people, it doesn't matter they are Muslim, they are not Muslims, they are old, they are young, they are relative, they're non-relatives, it's not allowed. It's not allowed. Why suspicions and assumptions are haram? Because it creates animosity and will take away the trust from people. We can't trust one another anymore. And we can't live with each other. And it will create animosity because I hate you. And I hate you because you think and you have assumption about me and you think negative of me. It makes people backbite. It makes people spy on each other. It basically breaks the society. That's why I love, somebody said, assumptions are the termites of relationships. The termites of relationship. It will work on it until it will bring it down. Suspicion and assumptions can come in many, many different ways in society. I give you an example. So many divorces happen between couples because of assumptions and suspicions. She always have this assumption about her husband, or he have this assumption about her. That, she doesn't know anything. Or she did this. Or she's a waster. Or he is just not committed. Assumptions, one after another. He's not responsible. He cannot get work. And these assumptions not true. And there's no reason for it. If there is a reason, that's a different. I'm talking about, we said before, it's an accusation with no proof, with no evidence. A lot of time you see assumption between partners. Many times I get to people here, talk to me and tell Sheikh, I think my partner is stealing from me. I think my manager is stealing from me. You have any proof? No, but he looks like that. So why are you having a partner with him like that? Better to break it up. Okay? And there is a lot of people have, the first thing come to their mind is a bad assumption. يعني سوء الظن بالناس, which is very bad. Like always think the worst of what you're doing. Assumption became something, it's a culture by the way. There is a lot of culture, that's the norm. The norm is always to have assumption about something bad about you. Always, this is what, you know what? If somebody smile at you, what's going on? Must be something wrong going on here. Must he want something? And unfortunately, this assumption became very common today. One sister, she's wearing her hijab and she's wearing even niqab. She had a car, her car broke here in Clear Lake. She was telling me, I had a flat tire. So this guy in a bike, bandana, tattoos, big beard, white guy, like, and he came to her. she's by herself in the kind of late in the gas station. Right where she's staying. He got off the bike. She said, I was terrified. I was scared. I was like, okay. Then he said, ma'am, what's wrong with your car? She said, oh, I got a flat tire. I'm trying to replace it. He said, let me do that for you, ma'am. And he took the tire out. He put the new tire and he fixed it for her. And he said, you know, we're in the Southern. We don't let lady do the hard work. A gentleman from the Southern will not let a lady do that work. Have a good day, ma'am. And he left. She's saying, my prejudice in the beginning, I thought negative. I had a bad assumption of him. I was suspicious of him. We need to find that. I know maybe she has a reason. I'm not saying she had a sin, but she has a reason because of the high trend of, you know, Islamophobes. But that's assumption. And create, you know, when you listen to some people say, if you see a black guy in the hoodies, you know, running, assumption immediately, you know, that it's bad. Or he might have a gun, or might have robbed you. Why? It's very bad when it comes, the society is suffering from it today. You know, you see, for example, a Latino or an Arab. Oh, he's too crooked, trying to, this Arab guy trying to cheat me. Or Indian, or why is that? That's haram. This assumption is so, unfortunately, it's really the termites of the society. Also, look at the assumption, happen a lot in workplaces. How a lot, subhanAllah, see the assumptions and the suspicion of citizens from the government. Oh, hadith wala haraj. Yeah, and hundreds and thousands of examples. Government will never do anything unless we think, oh, it must be bad. It must be bad. There must be, you know, they try to get this. You always think the default, when you talk about governments and leaders, the default that it is bad, it is, that's right. You never ever check yourself. The negative assumption is the default. And I'm wondering if that's correct. Somebody said, oh, because you can justify it as much, but I think there's a cross line all the time here. I do believe that there is, and you know, there is some reason, yes, I have my reason to have a bad assumptions about certain behavior or certain, I've been bitten too many times, there's a record. Yes, I'm not defending governments or not defending agencies, but I'm saying there is a little bit of excessive from people that they always think the worst. Like today, these days, you see online, everybody's saying, oh, Muslim community will suffer from Biden. Biden will do this. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but why this negative thoughts and assumptions of somebody didn't start even yet? How this will help me? How this will make me better? How, even if he's bad, how this will help me as a community? And isn't that also what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, اجتنبوا كثيرا من الظن? And I'm not talking about this individual, I'm talking about in general. I do sometimes believe, you might call me naive, but this is my personal opinion. I do sometimes rather to be stung by someone that I had good faith in than to poison my heart with negative thoughts about people. And I'll prefer to trust someone and I found him is not worthy of my trust than to be always suspicious of everybody. I prefer, if I have to choose, I'll choose the one that keep my heart clean. Also, the suspicious of the people. And you see this all the time. You know, these demonstrations, oh, they are what do you call them? Like, what the president keep calling them? Anarchy. Anarchies and what is with N, starts with N. He keep calling them this Anyway, you always, so the government will always think of them as some like suspicious group. You know, so in Muslim country, you see also all the happen all the time. Anybody who make anyone speak out against injustice will be accused. He trying to destroy the country, try to do this, will put in jail. He will immediately. You will see the suspicious of people both ways, from government to citizen, citizen to government. Look at the amount of suspicion that we have when someone give us advice. Happen all the time. He give you advice. What do you think he wants from me? What's exactly his motive? You always have, why did he talk this to me? What you start acting with suspicion. Also, see how much we are suspicious of business people. Oh my God, he makes so much money out of me, that's right. How do you know? And sometimes like, oh, exaggeration. And at least there are certain cases I'm aware of. You know, I know, for example, the person who owns that business, he really barely he's like making hundreds of thousands out of us. He's not. You find it all the time when it comes to business and customers and so forth. Also, there is a lot of suspicions towards the ulama and assumptions and bad assumptions, bad thoughts about ulama. Oh, they're sellouts, scholar for dollars. You know, those scholars knows anything. And how do you know? Like one person was telling me, oh, this leader and king or whatever, president of this country, all the ulama in his place, you know, are sellout, or this or this or that. How do you know? Maybe they are talking and they did the nasiha, they did their part. Why are you accusing them? How come he works in this government? He thought that working in there would reduce the amount of problem. Why we have a suspicion of each other? I remember once was talking to some group of activists, and I told them, it is so important that we trust one another. And we don't allow this kind of suspicions of one another destroy the relationship. For instance, let's say we have a group of people here in Houston will work like a watchdog group. Okay, like CARE, for example. Will work on if somebody let's say there is an elected official made an Islamophobe remarks about Muslims, or a law or a policy that is made or something like that which is offended to Muslims. They might go strong, hard on the person. Hey, this is not right, and maybe organize demonstrations, signatures, and basically put so much pressure on them. Then you have another group, let's say in Houston as well, who prefer to go the route with soft power, relationship. They sit with the mayor, they talk to him. Hey, Mr. Mayor, there's 1, 2, 3. Hey, police department, sheriff, so and so. We notice 1, 2, 3. They talk and they try to solve the problem. It is so important that those two groups, they don't have suspicion of each other. So the one who goes sit on the table doesn't tell, oh, don't worry about these people in the street who demonstrated in the street. They just bunch of, troublemakers. They want to show off and they have you see? That's not right. And the one on the street don't say the one who's sitting on the table, or they are sellout, they are this, they are that. That's haram. We can't function this way when we have a suspicion of each other. سوء الظن ليس بصحيح. Sometimes we have suspicion of groups of da'wah. Oh, they start a masjid. Oh, they just do this to collect money. Or this, and we fall into this, and that's not correct. We should check our assumptions and be careful when we talk about ulama, ad-du'at, Islamic groups, activists, and so forth. Oh my God, suspicious of relatives and family members, as hundreds of examples you can think of. Cousins and brothers and sisters, and you can see that in how often that we have the su'ul dhann in Egypt. Also, one I found very, very hard to say, the suspicious and the negative thoughts about your parents, especially from those young brothers and sisters who are listening to me today. that you think your father just want to ruin your day. You think your mom is just being mean to you. Or your parents are not being nice to you, or trying to control you, or trying to, why the bad suspicion? Why the assumption? In contrary, actually, 99% of the cases, the default rule of the parents wish nothing but the best for their children. Also parents, that's also another problem, that they always think negative about their kids. I'm very suspicious of their kids. And the kids suffer from this. You didn't do your homework, that's right. Why? The first thing is I didn't do my homework. Oh, you screwed it up, that's right. You ruined it, that's right. You're the one who took my car, that's right. Why? Just hold on. You have to fight that. And you haram to act upon. It's not recommended, it's not like makruh. That's haram to have the bad suspicion. Unless you have your own reason for it. Also, we sometimes have bad suspicion of non-Muslims. Like any non-Muslim, the default rule is that he wants to harm you, to do this, to do that. And that's not, especially against certain groups. Like for example, there is many times I feel, like immediately if you see any Muslim will have any type of relationship with, let's say, Jewish community, immediately, especially Jewish community, immediately the suspicions and the assumptions and the accusation will go to the max. Why? I know you might have, but you cannot generalize. If you have one or two experience bad, you can't generalize. Also, there is many examples I can give, but at least these are good practical examples. What are the most or common reasons for us to have assumptions or bad assumptions of others? Number one, that you yourself a negative person. You are negative by nature. You always think of the worst case scenario. That's why you always think negative of people. Number two, ignorant. You didn't know me. That's why you assume that about me. You didn't know him. You didn't know what's going on with this organization. You didn't know what's going on in this country. You just make an assumption. I didn't know. Like that day, somebody was saying, how come Sheikh so-and-so was with this group and two of them did this and this and this and that. They were doing something very bad. I said, how come the Sheikh? See, the Sheikh is there and didn't open his mouth. How do you know? You were there? No. And he didn't talk about it. And you want him to send you, to include you in his, make a Twitter about it and include you in Twitter to let you know? He actually talked to them in private. That one, when they came to Usama bin Zayd, he said, why didn't you talk to Uthman ibn Affan about some of the problem? He said, and you want me to talk to him in front of you? I talked to him in private. Why do you assume that I didn't say anything? So ignorant. Also, three, which is so important to keep in mind, that sometimes we raise our kids on this type of behavior from childhood. You raise your children to always be suspicious of everybody. Oh, stranger or bad. It's not stranger, be careful. No, bad. Those people that like that. And we kind of give some, like, generalizing. See you as a father or mother doing that. Like assumption. And sometimes the assumptions are so wrong. Like, for example, a divorced woman is a bad woman. How a divorced woman be a bad woman? Assumption. He got divorced, it means she is bad. She didn't know how to keep her husband or to keep her house. What if her husband is the one who's bad? Assumption is a very big problem, and sometimes comes because we are raised this way. Also, I understand that assumptions and bad assumptions and accusations and suspicion is so common today because also corruption is so common. There is a reason for us to think negative sometimes because there is a lot of corruption out there. There's a lot of bad people out. That's why it makes me see someone to be suspicious of. There's a lot of incidents. And I understand that, that's not justification, but understanding. It makes me more careful when I deal with. We all make basic assumptions, but things about things in life, sometimes those assumptions are wrong. We must trust in what we assume only, and we should not, we must never trust what we assume, only in what we know. Only in what we know. ولا تحسسوا, التحسس, try to listen and to spy on people, okay? ولا also قيل ولا تجسسوا in one of the riwayah, don't spy. طيب. ولا تنافسوا ولا تحاسدوا, don't be envy one another. ولا تهاجروا, some of the narration, don't cut one another, don't boycott one another. And this hadith forbid anything that will lead to cutting ties between Muslims, between community members, between society members. Also, any suspicious that has a right, a good valid reason for it, it is not haram. Okay? طيب, listen to what the fuqaha said. But even if you have a valid reason for suspicious, but this suspicion is not going to be something of a big deal, it's better to let it go. I'll give you an example. What's time now? 9 o'clock, let's say. Okay? It's late. My kids want to go to school tomorrow. I have suspicions my son didn't do his homework. Why? Because I saw him playing around, blah, blah, blah. Okay? I have a reason for my suspicion. But if I tell him about homework today, he's not going to do it right now. It's going to be anyway. You know what? Let it go. Talk to him tomorrow. I don't need to check, and sometimes it's better to let it go. You know what? I think they overspend. Khalas, they spend the money. Sometimes you let it go. It's much better for the heart. Okay? There is a very beautiful hadith in Sunan Abi Dawood عن أبي أمامة رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن الأمير إذا ابتغى الريبة في الناس أفسدهم. Ruler, when they are so suspicious of people, they will corrupt the society. Sometimes it's much better to have a trust system. And this hadith, I found the best way to apply it. Look at the honest system that we have in America. When you come in a custom, they don't check everybody's bag, that's right? You have a custom form, you have food, no. If there is a clear suspicion the dog, they pick you up. You act very, but if I start being suspicious of everybody, they don't do that. They let it go. Even sometimes one or two can go, it's not a big deal. Okay. But when you start making people that they have no trust, I go to some Muslim country, every bag has to be open. There is no honest system. There is no honest system. There is some cities in Europe, okay? It's very interesting. You go in hotel, you go, you pick what you want, you put the money in the box and you leave. Nobody there. It's an honor system. That system helps people to be better versus the suspicious and checking and investigating. It makes people feel like, since I'm a suspect, I'm suspect. And it doesn't really help people to grow. So also if the government always try to expose people's mistakes, always try to publicize the people's mistakes, what will happen? It will normalize the wrong in society, and that's wrong. إشاعة الفاحشة بذكر كل فضائح الناس ليس منه فائدة. هذا يوطن للمعصية، يوطن للفساد. Also, make sure that you have a role to play as well to make people not to have an assumption about you or bad assumption about you or suspicions about you. Be clear, ya akhi. Be in the light. Don't do shady stuff. It makes people be suspicious of you. Be honest, be clear. And the best thing, explain. You remember the story of the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam when he was walking in the night with his wife? He passed by two people. Those two people just walk fast. And Nabi said, hey, by the way, come down. This is my wife, Safiya. And Nabi was not worried about his reputation as much as you worry about them to have any bad thoughts, and that will destroy their iman. But he was open and clear. This is my wife. Why you make people think, you know what? I'm married. Straightforward. Why you have to hide and to play games and with you know what, Dad, I marry this girl. Khalas, move on with their life. You know why? You know what? This is the money for the masjid. Why you have to do it in a way and make it sound like very suspicious about you? So you need to help people not to have bad suspicion about you. That's also a good point to be addressed here as we talk about suspicions and assumptions. It's a disease, but it really need to go back again to the more we trust one another, the more we become positive thinking, the more we, especially in marital relationship, assumption can really destroy the relationship. Don't act upon assumptions. On friendship, don't act upon them. Ask, check. Hey, I have these thoughts and it's really bothering me. I want to ask you about it. And move on. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from all bad manners. That will be enough, inshallah. Next week we will have two hadith speaking about some character trait has to do with the rulers. Okay, so these hadith talk to everyone, ruler and citizen. But the following one is about the rulers and some of the important character trait of people in charge, not only ruler, but anyone in charge of society, country, family, company, and so forth. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.